to put everything, and we put the 3 steps in a complete program, next we would like to have an example showing you how to type an input from the user and save this input into an output file. In this example, we want to write a Java program to read full student name, ID, test1, and test2 for 30 students. And for each student, we need to output the student name, ID, test1, test2, and the average of the test. Do we need an array for these 30 students or not? In fact, we don't need an array. Why? Because when we read the data for a student, we will print the average and then we will go to the next student. So we are not going back to the first student. So in fact, we are not going to save the data into an array. We are going to read the name, ID, test1, and test2. We compute the average, and then we print the name, ID, test1, test2, and the average. And we go for the next one, and so on. Here is a sample input-output screen of the program. First, we print a message, student number 1, and we ask to enter the full name of this student. And then we ask the user to enter the ID and the 2 quizzes, and then the program will print the name, ID, followed by the 2 tests and the average. And then we go to the next student and so on for 30 students. Notice that for the output of the program, we are printing the student information with the average on a single line separated by commas. We have the name, comma, the ID, comma, and so on for the rest of the data. We did this intentionally. We did not print the name on a single line and the ID and the 2 quizzes with the average on separate line. So why do you think we are doing that? Because we want to represent each student information by a single data line. So that in the future, if these data lines are saved into a file and we want to read them again, then simply we read the data from the file line by line. And if we want to extract the student information from this line, simply we extract the information by splitting the line at the location of the commas. In the sample screen output, we have a small typo error. Instead of typing 2 tests, it is written 2 quizzes. That will not change the implementation of our program because we are going to read 2 double values for 2 assessments. So let us assume we are dealing with tests rather than quizzes. So let us go to JGrasp and implement this part, and then we will show you in the other part how to save the data into a file. So here we are in JGrasp. We are declaring full name as a string, ID as long integer, test1 and test2 as double. We are testing our program for entering student information for only 3 students. So we will enter the student name, we will enter ID and 2 tests, and on a single line we are going to print the full name, ID, test1, test2, and the average, all separated by a comma. So let us run the program and test it. So we will compile, no errors, and now we are running the program for testing. It is asking to enter the full name for the first student. So the first name is Ali Ahmed, and the ID is 20201234, and test1 is 8.5 and test2 is 9.0. So it is printing on a single line the name, comma, ID, comma, test1, comma, test2, and the average. But for student 2, notice it is not waiting for reading the name. It is going directly and asking for ID and the 2 tests. The reason is the following. What is the last read we have before reading the next name? It is reading test2. And when you press enter, when we have entered 9.0 and pressed enter, so 9.0 will be taken by next double and save it into test2, but it will keep the enter inside the memory of the scanner. So in the next iteration, when we come and try to read the next line, then it's going to read this enter that was left from the last input as a single line. So therefore, we have to get rid of it before we go to the next line. So how to do that? We will stop the program and we will come here and we will write a dummy reading for next line. So we write read.next line. And I will write a comment here to remove the enter that was inserted when we entered the value for test 2. So when we enter the value for test 2 and we pressed enter, Nextdouble will take the number and save it into test 2, but it will keep the enter inside the scanner. On the next iteration, next line will read this enter as a single line. So let us run the program again. And now it is asking for the name Ali Ahmed, the ID 20201234, and the first test 8.5 and the second test is 9.0. Now see, it is asking for the other name, Abir Mehsen, the ID 20194321, test 1 is 10, test 2 is 9.5. And for the last name, it is Mahmoud Jasim, and the ID 20191111, test 1 7.5, test 2 8.5, and we press enter. And as you see that each student record is represented by a data line separated by commas. And that ends the implementation of our program. In the second part of the example, we want to change the program and make it write the student details, name, ID, test 1, test 2, and the average into a file named student.txt, instead of printing the line on the output screen. So let us go to JGrasp and change our program so that instead of printing on the output screen, we need it to save it into a file. Now we are back to our program. Instead of printing the data line for each student on the output screen, we are going to save them into a file called student.txt. So let us follow the 3 steps for creating a file. First, we need to bring the class definition for a print writer. So we write import java.io.star, and we are going to import all the classes that are defined inside java.io. Next, we are going to create an output stream variable. So we have a print writer, and we are going to call it out file, and we are going to initialize it to null. So this is the variable for the output stream. Next, we open the file. So we use a try and catch block, and we are going to catch the exception that is called IO exception, and this is a super class exception for most of the input-output exceptions, EXP. And inside we are going to display a message that we have an error. So we write system.out.println, and here we will say error opening the file, and we write the name, which is student.txt for writing. Here we need to put backslash, and we close now the message inside the println. Then we need to stop the program, because if we don't have a file to write into it, so there is no point to continue. Inside the try, we open the file, so we create an object of type printWriter stream. So we write the name of the output stream, out file, equal new print writer, and we supply the file name as an input parameter to the constructor. So it is student.txt. Now if the opening is successful, then the catch block will be skipped. Otherwise, an exception will be raised, which is an input-output exception, and a message will be displayed and the program is stopped. If there is no exception, then we will go inside the for loop that will enter the data from the user. And now instead of printing the data line on the output screen, we need to send them to the file. So remove system.out and put the variable for the output stream, which is called out file. After finishing from writing, we exit the for loop. Don't forget that you need to close the file. So we write out file dot close. And that's it for sending the data line for each student to a file called student.txt. Before we run the program for testing, let me give you a piece of advice if you have a program that deals with file. You know that all file operations are executed silently. That means no information is displayed to the user of what's going on inside your program. Therefore, you have to inform the user what's going on. For our example, we are reading the data from the user, but we are not telling the user what's going on. So after we create the file and we save all the data lines inside the file and we close the file, we need to print a message to the user telling the user that all data has been saved into the file. So let us do that. So after we close the file, we will print a message system.out.println, and we will say that all data lines are saved into the file, and we write the name of the file and we close the message. So now the program is ready. Now we can test the program. So let us run and test the program. We have an error. It says the print drive cannot find symbol. In fact, we have a misspelling. Here we're supposed to write writer instead. So let us run it again. And now the program is running. So let us input the data. For the first name, we have Ali Ahmed, the ID 20201234, and the first test is 8.5 and the second test is 9.0. For the second student, we have Abir Mahsen, the ID 20194321. The first test is 10 and the second test is 9.5. And the third student is Mahmoud Jasem. The ID is 20191111. The first test 7.5 and the second test 8.5. And notice that after writing the data lines into the file, a message is displayed to the user. All data lines are saved into the file student.txt. So how to see the contents of the file? Since the file is a text file, then we can open it by any text editor to see its content. So we will open it with JGRATS because JGRATS can deal with text files. Also, since we did not specify a path for the file, then it will be created in the same place as the source code of the program. So let us open this file. We go to open. Since we created our file into a folder called files, and here is the name of the output file called student, so it is a student.txt. When we open it and see, these are the three lines for the three students. As you can see, the name, comma, ID, comma, test1, comma, test2, comma, and the average for the three students. And this completes the implementation of our program.